All right, we are back.
Yes, we are. Oh, I'm so excited for today. I
Yes,
am so excited for today. My goodness.
I am too. Even as I was like posting to tell folks about tonight's episode, I was just very, very excited. So I actually want to dive right in
I
because
mean, let's
we're
do it.
talking about teacher burnout. It's the middle of the school year. We made it through winter break. If you got kids in elementary school, they probably celebrated the 100th day of school, which means teachers are like only 80 days more to go. It's that hump. It's the hump that we're at. And right now, teachers are likely feeling that pressure. If you're in a grade that does state testing, you're feeling that pressure as you're getting kids ready. Maybe you've been dealing with the same kind of discipline problems throughout the school year. It's like this part of the school year is like that culmination. What do you think?
When I tell you that the memes about January being a whole year by itself is no joke. Like there are 365 days of January for teachers, and it's a drag. It's draining. It's stressful. Like you got kids coming back off of a Christmas break, so it's like you have to break them in all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and once you do that, you still have this whole semester of, well, what are we going to do yet next? Oh, we got testing coming up. So everything is about high stakes testing and all of the things. And it's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. So as we talk about um, teacher burnout, one of the things that we talked about, as we prepare for this, um, you know, our show each week, uh, we talked about some main kind of points. And I do want to set this up for everybody that's watching live or also watching the replay. This is going to be a 3-part series. We are going to go deeper and into different causes of burnout for 3 Tuesday talks. So, and then we have a nice surprise, I'll say, for our last episode in this series. We'll have a special guest on. So, for this part, we'll call it part 1 of our 3-part series. We really wanted to kind of dive into why teachers are leaving the education profession at alarming rates. Like schools are struggling with teacher shortages, colleges education programs are struggling to recruit people to even enter into the program. So, what are some things that are leading to this? Once teachers are in the field, what are some of the causes that they're not renewing for next school year, quitting in the middle of the school year, just having a I don't care attitude while I'm still working for the school year?
I
You want to
can't
talk about
wait
our
till I
first one?
find my next, my next thing type
Exactly.
of attitude. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing that teachers are dealing with, could be dealing with, is lack of administration support.
Hmm.
Um, and that can come in a lot of different ways. Like, for example, teachers who really need like to develop certain skills that help them be successful in the classroom
Hmm.
through professional development. A lot of times those teachers won't get the professional development that's catered to them.
Yeah.
Like they give a general session or make teachers go
Mhm.
to a general session about something that the district or the building administration thinks may be important for all teachers, and it may be. And this is not to say that it's not, but also that particular teacher needs certain things that other teachers may not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. For
yeah.
sure. So, have you had any type of personal experience with this? Because I remember for myself, when I was working in the schools as a speech pathologist, I had to go to the faculty meetings, and the principal decided we all had to read a book. I can't even tell you the name of the book. I was annoyed that I was being forced to read a book. We're meeting before school.
I couldn't tell by your tone that you were not, I didn't know you were upset by this. I'm sorry, friend.
Very annoyed. Not annoyed about reading the book, annoyed about this before school meeting, and just wasn't good. It wasn't something that the principal sought out our input for. What book do you want to read? What could help you become a better educator, a better clinician? It was just read this. And so that just was not a very positive experience to me. It just felt very forced. It was unrelatable for me. I couldn't use anything that we talked about in those discussions in my day-to-day work. And so that just really created a disconnect for me. Like, okay, I felt like the principal chose the book. Maybe it was something she liked. Maybe it was something she wanted to say all her staff had read and discussed or whatever. But if we read and discussed it, how is it informing my practice as a clinician? How is it informing your teaching as an educator? Not many people walked away with much. What about you?
Well, first, like when I hear your story, when I listen to you tell that, like I said, number one, it was an obvious pain point for you, especially because you came out of it with nothing that you felt like was useful for what you do on an everyday basis. I think that when we are secure in our leadership, then we're able to be open to what different people need and be okay with trying to get that to them. Because what we really want in education, or I think in any organization, is we want people to work in their strength.
Yeah.
Because we're here with our gifts and our talents. So those are the things that we excel in. Why not focus on those and help people strengthen their strengths?
Yeah.
Instead of just letting them sit there and always trying to force them to work on weaknesses, which takes more energy and more effort. So I have this friend of mine who went through a situation, and she was doing other things besides just classroom teaching. And so she was talking to me about just having some issues with those kind of things being acceptable for her. And it was like, if what she was trying to do was outside of what the administration were focusing on, then it was like shut down. Like they were not supportive of that at all. And so that's kind of disheartening, because I understand, all systems have their focuses. All schools have strategic plans that they create for the year and their goals, smart goals that they want to focus on. I just think sometimes, like I said, with the openness, if a teacher brings something to the table that they're interested in, give it a chance to see if it actually is or can be a part of what the school is doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because that when you do that, it helps people feel seen and heard and valued. My input is being heard, and it's maybe not followed to the T, but it's being heard, and I see it implemented in various ways. That makes a teacher, a clinician, a counselor in the school feel empowered. And you want that feeling as a teacher. And I would think as an administrator, you would want your teachers to feel that way too.
Absolutely. I will say that there was one place that I taught in personally, and It was the best year of professional development I had experienced. And the reason for that is because of what we're saying went wrong in the other situations.
Mhm.
So this administrator who was an amazing teacher before she went into administration, she understood and believed that professional development should be catered to the needs of the teacher. And
Mhm.
so she created this system, this point system, and she gave us like a ton of different ways and options for getting the points that we need for professional development for the year. So we had some book talks. If you were interested in that, then that was an option for you. We had roundtable discussions about different topics, hot topics in education at the time. She had things for us to read, observations that we could do. Like it was like what they tell us to do with our kids in the classroom. And having a leadership degree, a master's in education leadership, like that's what you do as a good leader. You are responsible for taking your people, seeing what they're good at, and putting them in a space where they can be successful.
Yep.
I thought that was amazing.
I wholeheartedly agree. And using each teacher's skill set and their interests to better them as an educator. So it does take that type of leader to understand the value in that. And of course, in the world of education, there are these unseen powers in the background. There's a lot of bureaucracy going on. There's a lot of top level people saying this is what we're going to do, and they have no real understanding of what that down end impact is like on the ground in the classrooms.
Mhm.
I think it's very important. Imagine you giving your students choices and how empowered that helps them feel. If an administrator gave their teachers choices in their professional development and how they receive that information, they feel
Yeah,
that same empowerment. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And you know, another thing that we can attribute to some of the teacher burnout, besides the lack of support from administration, but it kind of ties to it, is teachers feeling supported when it comes to student discipline.
Ooh, yeah.
Now, you know, we talk about stuff like that, and people kind of get in their feelings and get a little heated. So, as teachers, of course, classroom management is a thing. Like you do need to develop that skill, because if there's no management, then you can't teach, right? Um, and once you get past that point where the teacher has done what the teacher can do in a room full of 25 plus kids, now it's time for the administration to step in. And I've heard plenty of stories where kids have done some crazy things, some egregious things in the classroom, and they've been, you know, sent to the principal's office to go sit there and talk for a few minutes, maybe to the rest of the class or something, and they're right back in there that day. Or some people, they've seen the kid come right back into that same class period. Um, and for the teacher in the room, it can be devastating because I just sent you out because this was a situation in the moment I couldn't handle.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
What kind
definitely
of horror stories have you heard?
very similar. I have a lot of teacher friends, and it's like, okay, I dealt with it in the classroom to the best of my ability. And then I said, now you need to go to the office. And either the kid returns very shortly thereafter, or they come back maybe the next class period, no real change in behavior to be noted, or maybe they did something warranting in school suspension. And I've heard teacher friends say they walk past the ISS room and it's just chill time. Like they got snacks, they're on their devices. It's just chill and hang out. So then what is the lesson to be learned? And as we were preparing for tonight's show, I just looked up quickly some research to see like what is the effectiveness of in-school suspension, out of school suspension? What, you think about taking a kid out of the classroom, sending them home for days, how do they keep up with their schoolwork? And overwhelmingly, the research that I saw very much agreed that suspension in school or out of school doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Ooh.
But the flip side of that is, what's the alternative?
Mm-hmm.
What's the alternative?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I haven't. This is just where the schools I've been at now, in the South Georgia area, but I haven't seen the phones. But even without the phones, like if a student says to a teacher, "I don't care, send me to ISS." I mean that's a really good clue that ISS is not effective.
I would say. I would.
Um, yeah, and they don't. A lot of times in those situations, it's not because they're angry that they're saying that. Like they don't care if they get sent to ISS. Why not? I ain't got to deal with all these other kids in the class, especially if I'm going because I got into it with somebody because they were bothering me or we got beef with each other or what have you. Um, it's not effective. I feel like ISS is one of those things that when it was created,
Mm-hmm.
it was created and powerful in that time. But now we are in a different time. And so that means it's kind of run its season. And you're right. I mean, the question is, well, then what do you do?
Yeah.
And I feel like before ISS was created, there was something that was being used for discipline that became
Mm-hmm.
ineffective. And the question was asked at that point, well, what do we do? So I just think it's time to start rethinking some things that have been used for years and years. And we're trying to use it on a different generation of kids who are also in a different era in society.
Yeah, for sure. It has to be something more. I've had teacher friends discuss the role of the school counselor. So again, just reminding our viewers, I come from more of a preschool, elementary school background. I know you're middle, high school. That's why we do so well together because we have a nice balance. But at the elementary school level, it's usually one counselor, depending on the number of students in the school. They have those ratios the schools follow. So there's usually one counselor. If there's a second one, he or she's probably split between another school. So maybe 1.5 counselors. So I've seen kids go to the counselor's office to discuss the problem. But the issue is back to those ratios. You have one counselor to hundreds of kids. You have some elementary schools that have 500 kids in them. How is a counselor supposed to develop enough of a relationship with the students that when she is part of their intervention for discipline and behavior, that
Mhm.
counselor is a trusted person that student can share and glean useful information from? It's almost impossible.
Yeah, I every time I think about when you were in that position or anybody in that position, I always think when do they actually get to do what their title says that they are? So, because most of the time I would see counselors, and I've gotten along with them for the most part, and so we would talk, and I'm like, "So what you got going on?" Oh, I got to get ready for this test that I have to give these students, or I got to get
Mm-hmm.
report cards ready. Like they have a lot of administrative tasks, or other assigned duties
Yeah.
that clause that gets put in your contract.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, so when do you actually have time to counsel the kids? Because that's what they need.
Exactly.
So I,
Exactly.
I don't know.
Then
I
how
don't
does
know.
that become a useful resource if they're not able to, they're not empowered or have the opportunity to fulfill their role in the school? So um, I know we just talked about research as it relates to student discipline, but I know at the top of this episode, we talked about professional development as well. And discipline and professional development were one of the areas that a research study that looked at data from 2000 to 2019 and looked at what are some effective administrative efforts in supporting teachers. Among the list was discipline and rule enforcement, and then that professional development enhancement and the resources. Some of the other areas they found were staffing support, so making sure people aren't pulled in many directions throughout their school day. Also, looking at increasing autonomy and agency. So, what we talked about, having teachers feel empowered, and then also support with challenging parents, which I'm sure you can have some stories to share on that as well. And then also meaningful and constructive evaluation. So, in that list are these two areas that we're talking about tonight: that professional development courses being useful and I don't want to say individualized because maybe every teacher can't get exactly what they need, right? Some buildings have a lot of teachers. As a grade level, though, perhaps those teachers could come together to say, hey, this is what we feel like we need to best support our grade level or our academic area that we're teaching in. And, here on Tuesday Talks, we like to talk about the issues, but we also talk about solutions because that is most helpful. So, what do you see as some solutions to the issues that we brought up tonight?
So I think one thing would be to ask teachers what
Mhm,
they need.
mhm.
But there's a caveat to that because there are places, systems that send out Google Forms and ask you to complete them and submit them. And then we still get what they want us to have anyway.
Yep.
So, so like, it's really about, to me, are you kid focused? Are you student success focused? If you
Mhm.
are, that means that you know it's important, it's vital that the teachers are as well equipped as they can possibly be.
Mhm.
Research shows over and over again that the teacher is the greatest factor, has the greatest factor in student success, which makes sense. The kids spend the majority of their school day with their teachers.
Yep.
So one way to address student achievement is to pour into the people that are teaching them and have the most contact with them during the day.
Yeah, for sure. And these are really big problems that we're talking about tonight. Teacher burnout isn't just this one small issue that you can give one solution to. These are big problems with big solutions that take time. And I think you just spoke to a really great point. The first is change in thought from that administrative level. Um, I also feel like teachers have big numbers. There are a lot of teachers out there. And so using your voices as teachers to speak up for themselves and ask for what they need,
Mhm.
um, towing the line of demanding this is what I need, because I've all teachers enter the profession, like we talked about last week. You enter the profession because you want to help kids succeed. And so
Right.
then when you run into barriers that prevent you from doing that, it's like, why am I here? So then using that collective voice as teachers to come together and speak up to say what they need is really, really important, and not let that top down bureaucratic pressure really silence you. Because I know how that feels, and I've thought about silencing myself, but I've taken the time to go speak in front of school boards to advocate for lower class sizes, higher teacher pay. And you might think to yourself, like, they're not good, nothing's going to change. But at least I can say at the end of the day, I spoke up. So they knew what the issues were. They won't be able to say nobody ever told us. They'll
Right.
know what the issues are. So using your voice is super, super important.
I think that's so good. I think one thing that could help with that, for I've developed an affinity for new teachers to the
Mhm.
profession, and so especially for them it's really hard for them to speak up because they feel like they're so inexperienced that they don't have any value to offer. Or I've heard a brand new teacher tell me verbatim that the teachers told them that she didn't have any value to offer because she was
Mm.
new. So I think that making sure teachers have really good mentorship
Mhm.
is another way that can help, not just with what they do and how they do things in the classroom, but if there's an issue that they need to bring up to the administration, having an advocate with you, especially in the form of a peer, is very empowering,
Mhm.
and can provide you with some comfort in going into that situation the best way possible. Because, again, like you said, we came into the profession because we had a heart for the kids to be successful.
Yep. And that's really what it boils down to. We have to remember that. So when teachers start to quote unquote complain, it really is their frustration because they're not being allowed to do the job that they entered the field to do. I would also encourage teachers to think locally, not globally. And what I mean by that is we can try to think of solutions to fix all of education, or we can try to think of solutions to fix our district, our school, even our classroom, or our grade level. I feel like when you kind of drill down and make that circle of impact a little bit smaller, then it seems more manageable and you're able to see the fruits of your labor a little bit more quickly than if you're trying to solve the problems of the entire school district. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think, I don't know if many people know about this. I'm in education, so we know, but Ron Clark Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Ron Clark Academy here in Georgia is huge, and it started exactly like you just described. It was a teacher in his classroom who was confronted with these issues, and he figured out a solution. He worked to figure out a solution to his problem. Well, because he did that in his classroom, locally, then it caught on, and pretty soon now we can attack this a little more globally. And they get teachers from all over to come into their school that's currently operating and to do
Mm-hmm.
professional development to see how they're running it and being as successful as they are.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. That's a really good example of that think locally, not globally mentality and the difference that that can make. I know we had some comments in the chat. Um, One was in support of the fact that there's no effectiveness in school suspension, and the research overwhelmingly agrees. Thank you, Dee, for joining us tonight. I worked with her at an elementary school in Virginia. And then we have another comment in the chat. Is there anything between ISS, which is in school suspension, and out of school suspension, and sending kids to alternative schools? So what's that in between? 'Cause that's a big jump to go from. Alternative school is not a game. Like the real ones are there.
Right. Yeah. Alternative schools come in different forms. And it really just depends. I love that question. We might have a part 4. I don't know, Tiffany.
Ooh, might
Because
be
that's
part
a whole
two.
thing in itself. Like, so to me, the question is, what is the purpose of the alternative school? So there's
Yeah.
alternative schools that address kids who need a different way or different type of teaching that's so different that the regular school can't really accommodate that.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes attached to behavior, sometimes not. I think a
Yeah.
lot of times when we think of alternative school, we think, oh, that kid was bad, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's not always the case. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, that might have to be our part 4, looking deeper into that in between, the in school and out of school suspension, and then sending kids to alternative school. Great question.
Mhm.
So we are at the end of our time, but remember, this is a 3-part series, maybe 4, as we've explored tonight. And so next week we will be back talking about the same topic, teacher burnout, but capturing some different causes of that burnout, discussing the impact, and then, as always, providing solutions. I did see one more comment come in. If we don't address the dilemma of holding parents accountable, our kids won't be accountable. Very true, Dee. That parent component
Absolutely.
is huge. Because if you send them home for out of school suspension and the parents aren't making sure that, there are consequences for whatever their actions were in school, they're just going to come back to school the same way.
Yep.
And having that involvement. I mean, I have many stories of parents being called to come get their kids, and they say straight up, I'm not coming. Your problem between the hours of 8 and 3. What do you
Wow.
do as a
Wow.
teacher? What do you do as the administrator? So that might also be part of our part 4, that parent accountability piece.
Okay, so y'all like this. What I'm getting, if I'm hearing you correctly, people in social media land, is that this is a big issue that you would like to see us address.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Me and Tiffany, we got some work to do.
Yeah, we do. We do. If you have a specific part of your teacher burnout story that you want to share, feel free to send us a direct message so we can incorporate that into upcoming episodes as part of this series, and make sure we're addressing what you want to talk about, what you want to hear about, and sharing some of your experiences too. So thanks everybody for joining us tonight. This was a good one, Val.
It was. We'll see you guys next week. Same time, same place.
Same place. That's right. Good night.
Good night.